Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the next Fire Guys podcast. Today we're here at Staffordshire Fire and Rescue Service headquarters with Mark Pearce, the fitness advisor.
Yep.
Thanks for inviting us today,
No problem,
Mark. So you're fitness advisor for Staffordshire Fire and Rescue Service.
Yep. So
from your journey, let's take you back a bit from school. When you left school, is that when you became a fitness advisor, or?
No, I took a strange journey really, because I was at school and me passion, if you like, and my goal for a career was going to be in sort of media and film, believe it or not, sort of behind the camera sort of thing. That was a long time ago. So I wasn't one of those kids who grew up wanted to be a firefighter or anything like that. It kind of happened. So I went to university, did sort of media and film. I came out, got a generic office job, and I sort of stumbled into it really. So I saw the advert, I spoke to people who were in the job. I thought, yes, that sounds really good. I went in quite relaxed to the interview because I heard so many stories of people trying 3, 4, 5, sort of 6 times before they get in. Yeah. So I thought, there's no way I'm going to get in. So I applied, and that might have sort of benefited me because I didn't expect to get in, and I got in first time. And then, so then I became a firefighter. So I was doing that for just under 17 years as a firefighter.
As a firefighter, yeah.
And then, time. Yeah. And then in that, about the last sort of 5 years before that time, I became a PT sort of outside of work. It was actually through the FBU, and they trained a few people in staffs to become
Yes, I remember that happened in
Leicestershire. Yeah, which was amazing. So I became a PT, started to become a fitness assessor, if you like, and do like the fitness testing here. But there was no sort of role or responsibility. It was just physically to tick the tests off. I did a lot outside of work as well, created my own sort of business in person and online. And this came up as a temporary position initially for 6 months to become the fitness advisor.
So it was just a temporary move.
Yeah,
it wasn't like
no.
Okay.
And then I thought I'd give it a go to see what I like, because like I said, I'd done sort of 17 years and it's getting a bit older, and shift work was getting a bit harder and things like that. And 2.5 years later, I'm in the role still. So hopefully it will become permanent soon as well. But so it's a bit of a strange journey.
We'll come to that later on in the interview, but we'll go back to, so you joined Staffordshire Fire and Rescue Service.
Yep.
So why did you choose the fire service? What made you choose it?
I think it was the environment. I think I wasn't, like I said, I got an office job, and I worked obviously other jobs before that, and I couldn't find anything that really fitted, that's good, not good English, that I felt 100% sort of comfortable in, or I could see myself sort of doing this for 5, 10, sort of 20 years. I always felt like I was doing a job to earn some money.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that. From a young age, I thought, I don't really want that, because like my dad, for example, he worked hard all his life in factory work and things like that. And I thought he was 100% sort of doing it for the family, which is great and honourable. But I thought I really sort of wanted a job that I really enjoyed, and I wanted to develop in, I wanted to learn. And then when I spoke to people in the role, and I could just feel there was like a rapport, and I liked, because I played a lot of team sports and that when I was sort of younger.
What sports did you play?
Mainly sort of football, a very, very sort of low sort of level.
But that's your kind of thing, team sports.
Yeah, and I kind of like sort of being part of a group and being part of a bigger, not a bigger journey, that sounds a bit sort of cheesy, but being part of a small cog in a bigger machine, and that kind of appealed to me. And I think it was just the environment, and I went on a couple of watch river visits and saw the banter and the and like the Mickey taking and the overall sort of, you'd look at it and they didn't look like they were at work.
Yes.
And I thought, that sounds great. Yeah. I think it was the environment really.
Yeah.
And the everyday is slightly different. And that sort of aspect, I think, was the biggest appeal.
Okay. So you told us about your journey from whole time to your position now. And you mentioned how long have you been a fitness advisor now? 2.5 years?
So 2.5 years, yeah.
So we'll go into that actually. Fitness is a big interest of mine as well, especially when I was in the job. So nationally, I know you're involved nationally with FireFit. Sorry, I should have got you to tell us a bit about how you've got involved with this FireFit. What is FireFit?
Yeah, so it's an amazing sort of like it's overseen by the NFCC, so it's like a subgroup of the NFCC, and I think they have them in other departments as well, and like across the service, and it's essentially a collection of the equivalents of myself from other brigades, but there's academics in there, there's sort of decision makers in the fire service, there's I think it's chaired by Neil Taylor from Lancashire service, and it so it's basically where everyone sort of gets together. We meet up sort of quarterly via Teams or in person, and we talk all things sort of fitness related, right down to the fitness testing and the nuts and bolts of that, right up to the academic sort of studies and research and developments that come from sort of worldwide as well. Because there's some academics on there who've got their fingers, like there's one, for example, who works with the WHO, so the World Health Organization. So brings research from all over the world, and then tries to not necessarily sort of package it up, but see, can we sort of use this and improve things in this country? And it all leads to a big event at the end of the year in November where we have the FireFit conference. And that's exactly what it says, really. So each year there's sort of different sort of speakers. If there's a hot topic or a latest bit of research, then we get that person to speak. I mean, I've only been in the group, so I've been in this role 2.5 years. So I joined sort of pretty much straight away in terms of the steering group. So there are obviously a lot more sort of senior sort of members of the group who sort of control it. So, but I'm I try to be like an active member because I'm quite sort of passionate about it, and I ask a lot of questions, and I like to know sort of why we do things, and is that still sort of relevant, and blah blah. So whether that annoys a few people, I don't know, but
but for the right reason.
Exactly, hopefully. And there's everyone's of like-minded, and everyone's just trying to drive it forward, really, because obviously, as with every department in the fire service, it's got to evolve, it's got to change, and we've got to keep sort of trying to make things better for people. So that's I suppose that's the overall unofficial sort of aim of the group, really.
So in regards to firefighter fitness, I was going to ask what's the current state of firefighter fitness in Staffordshire, but I'm not, because you're involved with National FireFit. You've probably got a more of a not a global but a national view on firefighter fitness. What is the state of the UK's firefighters' fitness? Is it pretty good, or does it vary, or what?
I think it varies. I mean, obviously, what I'm about to say is I don't have. Obviously, I know all the sort of stats and things like that for staffs, but I haven't got access to the actual sort of physical sort of test. So what I'm going to say is quite a general sort of statement. I think overall, it's really good. I think there's a lot of things in life that have slowed things down in that, right up from sort of crewing sort of levels. It depends on the workforce as well. So, for example, we're in staffs where we're heavily reliant on call staff, which obviously brings a lot of challenges in itself, because it's easy to say for whole time you've got an hour a day in the gym or whatever, but if you're on call, it's not as easy as that, because they've got other jobs and families and things like that. So which shouldn't be an excuse, but it's definitely a reason why. So every brigade is different. We're quite a rural brigade, so like the challenges that we have might be sort of different to West Mids and London and things like that, which is obviously a heavily urbanised brigade. But from when I speak to people, I think sort of generally it's good, and generally I think the issue is trying to progress, and I think it's trying to get away from the attitude of doing the minimum, i.e. to pass the fitness tests. And there might be great sort of firefighters and they pass the fitness tests every year, but the older I get, I become more conscious of, it's not about sort of chasing sort of numbers and personal bests and all that. It's all about sort of training for longevity, essentially. And I think that's where the mindset is changing a little bit. Everyone's a lot more conscious on sort of their mental health and sleep and rest, and training effectively, sort of, rather than trying to smash yourself every single day. And I think, but that's a fitness sector thing, I think, that is slightly changing. It's not so much about sort of like the beasting, as we talked about earlier, and getting as massive as possible, because there is a place for that, but it's not 100% sort of useful in the firefighter role for like a million reasons. So like I say, it's just a sweeping sort of statement, but generally I think it's good, and generally everyone is positive. It probably could be better, but like I say, I think it's trying to mix your lifestyle with like the real life things like families, second jobs, things like that, and trying to be sort of realistic in the role, but at the same time striving to always be better.
I mean, also in regards to the fitness, obviously we've got the challenge of now, they're expected to work up to 60 and you can work beyond 60 now. So there's that challenge as well.
Exactly.
So in regards to that, and I'm hoping this is not too sensitive, but the different physiological makeup of males and females, does that have a challenge? Or because what I felt when I was in the fire service, the female firefighters I worked with, they worked harder at their fitness than the males. Possibly because some of the males thought, well, I'm going to be always all right. But it's not the case. It drops at different stages in your lifespan, I guess. So are there any challenges with that?
Yes and no. I think the biggest challenge, well, there's two sort of aspects to it really. Scientifically, without overusing sort of that word, in terms of the fitness tests and what a firefighter is expected to do, there is no sort of difference between sort of male and female. All the tests are designed because it's the weight of the ladder, it's the effect that it is on the body and and how you use oxygen, how efficient you are using oxygen to do firefighter tasks. So although there is obviously sort of differences between male and female, it's the same job essentially. Where I think the biggest sort of challenge is, if that's the right word, is that, and again this is a sweeping sort of statement, most sort of females who are into there for fitness aren't into the same type of fitness that most men are. And again, it's dead sort of general that statement. But for example, like the upper body issue, men generally like to show off and then they like to do arms and shoulders and stuff like that, where generally it's not normally a priority for females. So when they come into a role like this, or they think about doing a role like this, they're often not necessarily sort of scared off, but they think, well, I can't do that because I can run a marathon, I'm a great athlete, I do sort of all these sort of different bits. But there is the upper body sort of strength element, but it's not that they obviously can't do that. It's just generally not a focus of most sort of females. That being said, once they come into the job, they're obviously aware there's big heavy kit, there's big heavy leathers. Some most have made like an attempt, and and if they're in the job, they pass the test.
That's it,
but I do think it's something that we need to work on in terms of trying to attract. I think there's still an element of some sort of girls at school don't grow up thinking they can be a firefighter because it's still deemed as a fireman and things like that.
So I'm surprised at that.
It's definitely sort of changing. But we've had conversations with passing recruitment sort of meetings, and they go to schools and things, and they don't even think it's an option, and not they physically sort of don't want to do it, but it's still a male job, and that's something that we've got to work on. But we're everyone in the fire service as well is a big believer. Everyone's got a role to play, no matter sort of your shape, size, your height. It's not a male or female thing. It could be. I've worked with a lot of short sort of firefighters who are amazing sort of firefighters. They're like the border on a midget, but so everyone and what they're sort of good at. A bigger bloke might not be good at, but then a bigger bloke might not be able to drag sort of something or get through a small hole or move for a long period of time. And then they might be good for that initial sort of burst of strength, but then they blow out sort of really easy. So everyone's got a role to play. And I suppose it's trying to find your weakness, and that's something what I do in my job is it's not necessarily a cookie cutter. Here's a plan. It's sort of what you're good at, and what could you improve on, and then we'll start with that and like the low hanging fruit really.
That's interesting. I found my weakness. I can run all day. And I can wear a BA set all day, but I needed to start getting strength training as I got older. So that's a weakness I found out. So that's interesting.
So sorry, but that's where the more you sort of read into it, it gets more and more depressing as well. Because I read something the other day where from the age of 30, your strength and everything gets harder. So it's harder to build more muscle. And your metabolism slows down, and et cetera. So if that starts at 30, obviously you can do things to kind of to slow that down, hence the training. But it does get harder as you get older. And touching on your point earlier, that's where we need to start looking more long term, because the retirement age has gone, or gone up. It's definitely something we need to be more sort of conscious of, because that's the first thing that goes is like your strength really, unless you work at it.
Yeah. I mean, I always see the fire service or a team it's the way I see it. It should be seen a bit like a rugby team. A normal everyday, not the England rugby team, they're all monsters, the men and the women, but a normal average local rugby team, they're all different sizes, but they're all different sizes and they offer all different skill sets.
Definitely.
And that's the way a good watch would be.
100%.
They'd be no good if they're all like me. There'd be a lot of people who agree with that. But yeah, it's everyone has a skill set and something to offer. So it really doesn't matter as long as you pass the test. And the tests are the same. Are they still the same?
Yeah. Exactly.
So what are the entrance tests?
So there's like the entrance test, then there's like the annual test. So the entrance test, again, this is only for Staffordshire because it kind of it varies like brigade to brigade. So ours is the bleep test as standard to level 8.8.
All right.
Which has dropped. So so probably 3.5 years ago, it used to be sort of 9.6.
That's right.
But that it was put in the policy. It's 9.6, even though you only have like the VO2 max. This is when it gets all nerdy, so apologies. But the VO2 max equivalent is about 8.8.
Right.
But it used to be sort of 9.6 because it used to say in the policy to account for like your loss of fitness sort of levels as you age. But then obviously that is age discrimination, because if you're already at that age when you join the job, you're asking them to do something that you know is going to be harder before they've even started, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it was reduced down to what the standard is. So it means it's the same for everyone, and whether you're new, whether you choose to do that for the annual test. I don't know anyone would choose to do the bleep test because I don't like that test. It's horrible. But yeah, so it's 8.8 to get in. The annual test, then it breaks up into, you have a couple of options basically. So you can choose that, or you can do the Chester treadmill walk-in test.
Yeah.
Which is a 12-minute sort of incline walk test. And there are a couple of variations, like the step version, if you've got an injury and things like
I remember that. Yeah.
But generally, once you're in the job, it's the bleep test or the treadmill test.
Because I joined a few years before you, so when I joined, there wasn't an annual fitness test. I'm a big fan of it because the way I see it, when someone like you came to the station, you could show me how I've been over the years.
Yeah. And
it could show me, okay, I need to do a bit more work, or no, that's great what you're doing. So I quite liked that annual fitness test. So you do that to every firefighter. Is that from firefighter to what level is it?
Yeah, well, we choose as a brigade to all the way up to the chief, because we've got a good chief and that he's really into his fitness and he's a big believer that whatever I'm telling people to do, I need to be at the same sort of level. So all the POs sort of do the same.
Yeah.
There is guidance, and a lot of brigades do it where, so using the 12-minute test, for example, to do the whole thing from station manager upwards, it's only up to 10 minutes.
Right.
But we as a service have decided no, from whether you're a firefighter or the chief, everyone is doing the same test, and I kind of like that attitude. I think that's a good sort of message to send out.
Also it's not also about an example, it's thinking about their long-term health.
Yeah, exactly for the exact same reasons.
The fitter they are, they'll live longer.
Exactly, yeah. And that's the culture, that's the environment, and that's the biggest part of my job really. It's not, although in the job description it's to make sure everyone passes the fitness test and you want sort of stats and reports and blah blah blah, but I see it as much bigger than that.
Yeah,
I'd love to have a bigger and better sort of like a fitness culture where it's treated as important as a BA wear, as a BA refresher, as a working at heights refresher, all that. It should be as important, sort of front and centre, and planning and training as a watch, and it being conversations and people talking about it and they come to me for advice and blah blah blah.
Yeah,
and that's something. And I don't want to put words in other sort of brigades thing, but I think that could be improved sort of nationally as well, because we've come away like before my time in the 70s and 80s and early sort of 90s, there seemed to be a bit more of a sport culture, at least, where there's a lot of volleyball going on and a lot of
used to get
team sports. Exactly, sort of sports league.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it still exists, but it's quite small. There's only a handful of people, and it's really restricted. It's only if you're doing this and that. And I think we've gone away, but then there's a lot more to the job now, I believe, without putting words in people's mouths again. But there wasn't the fire safety and all the hydrants and things like that. So that it is sort of weighing it up. But overall, I think we need to have a bit more of like a well-being culture.
Yeah. I mean, you say about I remember I used to get time off to play rugby.
Yeah.
But also you're allowed to smoke on station. And
Yeah.
there was bars, so some
Yeah,
things have gone for the better. I mean, you can't defend.
No,
that,
it's hard to justify that.
It's madness to think there was bars. So going on to the fitness entrance tests, could they improve? Could they be improved? Or how would you improve them? Have you thought about, if they said, right, okay, nationally, Mark, we'd like you to come up with a new firefighter entrance test, what would they be?
It's tricky. I think there's loads of caveats to that. First of all, there's got to be sort of science behind it. I believe there's got to be a reason why the test is there. So a lot of people don't like the test because they're not operational based. Like, for example, the bleep test and the Sherpa test, which I totally get.
Yeah.
But there's a reason for that. So externally, it needs to be a test. So if you're coming into the service, it needs to be a test that you can practice. So obviously, if you make a compulsory test that you need sort of bits of fire kit, it's going to be impossible for people to practice. So hence why the bleep test and everyone's got a treadmill or a treadmill at the gym. So and the science behind it and the effect on the body is there's got to be a measure. I don't think it should just be like sort of climb a ladder and roll out a hose and do the standard things that we do because there's a skill element to that. So if you can't practice that, then it's unfair, really. And say if you're retained, then you can practice it. So you've got an unfair advantage. Or if you live near a local station that you can go in and practice, course, again, you've got a bit of an advantage.
Yeah.
However, so saying all that, I do think there needs to be more of a mix of physical skills. So it's a cardio test. It's a cardiovascular test to reach the minimum, which we kind of need, but I think that should be sort of one element. So I think there should be more of a strength element, a strength endurance element. So not necessarily being as big and strong and picking up cars and stupid things like that. No. But there should be like picking up heavy weights at awkward angles and moving with heavy weight and casualty drag. So that is sort of ticked off in the JRTs.
Yeah.
So once you do the initial fitness test, so once you do the initial fitness test, then obviously that is sort of covered in the JRTs.
Sorry, what?
Sorry.
No, it's
so they're like the job-related tests.
Yeah.
So you do the initial fitness test. So for us in staffs, it's passing the bleep test.
Yeah.
And like you tick that box and you go through to the next stage, which is the job-related test.
Okay.
And that's broken down into 6 elements.
Yeah.
And that is job-related, tiny little tasks, really. So one is climbing up a ladder and sort of leaning back and sort of reading a sign. And
I remember that.
And it's to measure sort of different things. So that one is like your confidence, really. So it's not to go up really high and make sure your textbook perfect. It's just to make sure you're relatively confident and not afraid of heights, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then there's a casualty drag where you have to drag a casualty around a little track.
Yes.
Equipment carry test. Like a rat run, we call it, but like in sort of dark tunnels. And there's equipment assembly, so you build something. That has recently sort of changed. That's where we have sort of moved with the time. So it used to be a big old bit of porta power kit, which is a really old thing that I don't think is in any sort of fire service anymore.
Not for a long time.
And it was always a recruitment test, and you had to screw sort of bits together, then take it apart. So that's gone now here and in a couple of other brigades, and we've gone for like a working at heights, like a bit of a mini sort of a setup. So it's got a little bit of an anchor point, and you have to tie a knot and put it through a pulley system. It's all dead basic and on like a tabletop, so you're not hanging from a building or anything. There's one more which I've totally forgotten. But they're sort of job related tests. So and like the ladder lift. So that's 35-ish kilos above your head. But the age of the kit, God knows, is so sort of old and battered and rusty. So in my head, the way to answer your question, I suppose, would be to combine all that a little bit more. But it's easy to say that without it making it harsh for people who can't get hold of equipment. So it needs to be something that you can replicate. So I don't know what the answer is.
I know I've seen some of the armed forces, their entrance tests. They've got these like sacks that they have to almost put on a shelf. They're all different weights.
Right.
I've seen that. I don't know.
So and then because it's functional sort of strength, and I suppose that's any way to. Because that's what I was saying about. It's not about being the biggest and strongest.
No.
It's about moving that weight. And so that could be a perfect way to do it. But for me as well, it's it has to be standardized, and that's something that
Yes.
we're always sort of fighting about.
Yeah.
I get frustrated when there's another brigade that's 5 minutes away and they do a different entrance test to what we do, and I think surely there should be a national consensus.
You'd think so.
Like, there might be a tweak for. I can't even think of a reason why there'd be a tweak, because if they're standard basic tests, either sort of using firefighter kit, which everyone's got, or it's a fitness test that everyone can do, there's no reason why the initial tests can't be exactly the same. And that doesn't always happen, and that's where I get frustrated. I think, well, why? It's fine if that test is great, or there's even a suite of tests to kind of choose from, 3 or 4 tests, which we're nearly down to sort of nationally, but there's still a couple of brigades who still do at least one more test.
Do they tend to be the bigger brigade?
Yeah, generally.
Yeah. So it might be.
So there is a lot of issues, and I totally get it, but I still haven't heard an answer to say why that can't be standardised, and I haven't heard an answer to sort of justify that. If it's a good test and it's valuable, then great. Then we should all have it as a choice.
Yeah,
it shouldn't just be no. We don't want to do that. We don't want to do that, but they can. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I know. A few years ago, Leicestershire, Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire, Lincolnshire, maybe they did an East Midlands one.
Okay.
East Midlands selection. So they were doing the test, but I think they did it once or twice. And it changed probably with changes of chief.
Yeah, exactly. All that sort of makes a difference.
Yeah. So about your job as a fitness advisor, I've got this. So what's the best about your job? What do you enjoy the most?
I think there's a few things really. The main
people.
No, I love that. I think it's because I'm into it, and the more I've been in the role, the more passionate I've got. And I'm sort of craving to learn more, and I want to do sort of qualifications. I want to push things forward, and that for me, and making a real sort of difference. It sounds really sort of cheesy, but
oh, not at all.
Sometimes in the role as a firefighter, you're a firefighter, and it's a great job, a valuable job, but you're one of many for firefighters, and there's only so much. Although you're asked for your ideas of how to improve things in the service, it's often falls on deaf ears, or there might be reasons that you don't understand why that can't happen. So although there's an initial sort of frustration, which is another benefit of coming up into headquarters, you start to I see why they've made this decision. I see that. So as a firefighter, I felt a bit sort of, I wasn't aware of it at the time because I enjoyed it, so I didn't realise it. But since I come out of it, I felt a little bit like I was sort of going through the motions a little bit, because I've been in a while, I'd seen sort of most things and done most things, so I was going through the motions. I still tried, and that obviously wasn't. But since coming up here, it's like my brain's exploded, and I'm so keen. So that's probably the biggest thing. But making a difference and helping people, and that includes sort of policy wide. So if I make a big decision or to set up a big sort of a resource that helps a lot of people, that's great. But just the one-on-one conversations I have with people, and they ask for help, or say, I'm really sort of struggling with A, B, C, and I say, have you tried this? Here's a plan that I've made for you. And they've, come back to them in 6 months' time, and they're absolutely sort of smashing it and doing amazing. That is a feeling that's really addictive.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, not only are you making them better at their job, but you're having a real good effect on their health. Yeah. So it's a win-win, isn't it?
Which is the bigger picture, I think, as well, because for the people who roll their eyes about the fitness test, the fitness test to see if you can do the job is the smallest sort of reason why we do it, because we do like a bit of blood pressure as well, and resting heart rate and BMI and things like that. Not that I'm a fan of BMI, but that's another story. But all these sort of body composition things that can indicators for health. For me, that's so you've got another 10, 20, sort of 30 years sort of playing with your grandkids. That's more important than passing the 12-minute test, and that's why I'm really keen to. I don't ever want to reduce the amount of bits that we do in the fitness test, because it's a health check. It's more than a fitness test for me, and that's the reason why. So I think it's really important.
Yeah, completely agree. So we joked about failing people, and that must be, it was a joke, but I failed incident command test. I'm not going to give an excuse why I failed it, and the people that assessed me, absolutely spot on. They couldn't have been more supportive, because it's ego, isn't it?
Ego. 100%.
There's never any chance of me failing a fitness test. Even with one leg, I wouldn't. Sure. But does that happen when people fail the fitness test?
Not very, 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 very often. I'd probably say, since I've been doing it, like I say, 2.5 years, it's probably been two to three who have failed the physical a test where, because again, it's not always sort of their fault, because we have like sort of cut-offs for blood pressure as well.
Yeah.
So like the pre-test checks, and that is sometimes an issue.
Yeah.
But again, you're probably talking over the last sort of couple of years, maybe into double figures just. So we have about 550 operational staff, so it's not a massive amount over 2 years.
How do you? Because that must be quite difficult to tell someone, you know.
Yeah, it's hard, and that's something I've grew in confidence. Like in the role at the beginning, it was really hard, and I'd often be speaking to people who've been in a lot longer than myself. You know, sort of in their sort of late 50s, early 60s, sort of sometimes. Yeah. But I've sort of grown in confidence, and because I kind of know the best advice to give them, I can sort of help. So although it's bad, you know, I like the analogy I use, easy to say, it's like a bookend. So like the bookend is the bad bit. So right, you got high blood pressure. I'm gonna have to take you off the run until you get sort of checked. But everything after that is all positive, because you're going to hopefully improve your lifestyle, improve your life, and you're going to make like like an improvement. But saying that, sort of 9 times out of 10, it tends to be the bit of the white coat syndrome as well.
Yes.
So we've extended it so you can do your blood pressure like a couple of days before the test day now. So it sort of relieves that a little bit. So once they hit the high number, they are taken off the run and got to go to the GP to get sort of checked. But 9 times out of 10, they come back. There has been a couple of people though who've gone on to medication and things like that. So as soon as that only has to happen once for me to, again, it validates, if the doctor was now sort of senior and he said that, no, there is an issue, you need to go on medication. I think it's not a win, it's not good for them. But that wouldn't have been sort of picked up otherwise unless we did that.
And
so
something
exactly,
a lot worse,
exactly. I know it's happened in Brigade up north. I want to say Cleveland, but I might be wrong on that, so don't quote me on that. And they did the same sort of thing, and a couple of people ended up having sort of heart surgery because it was picked up in a fitness test. So again, it might be one person out of 100, but for me, that's worth it, because if they had a heart attack on the job, you know, if they didn't have that test, so things like that always sort of stay in my head, and that's why I'm always sort of pushing to try and sort of drive the importance of it. Really.
So. There's one thing I've seen on the internet, and I'd realised I was doing it. And see what you think.
That's never a good start when you find something on the internet.
It was a clip. It was a clip of a former chap in the army, and he said, "We used to train really, really hard. So, but job specific. So when we had to make decisions, we were still fit enough. Our heart rate was low enough to still make good decisions. So what I always did, which you would have been probably against, the treadmill test. I used to do it with breathing apparatus, air on, flash hood, gloves, trainers, not fire boots, and full fire kit. To try and make me better as a decision maker, but also as a BA wearer." What are your thoughts on that?
It bounces really. I wouldn't do it as standard. And again, there's people in the same position as me who might sort of say the opposite. As standard now, I don't think it's a good idea for a couple of reasons. There's like the reason there's like it's a fact now that firefighters on average in the world sort of die younger than a lot of occupations, and that could be mainly because of contamination over the years, and there's more of a cancer risk. Basically. And some in service as well. And it could be because of heart attacks, could be because of increased risk of cancers, etc. So sort of taking that's obviously a massive sort of subject and loads of ins and outs of that. But taking that in general terms, a lot of it is to do with the stress of the job as well, sort of physically and sort of mentally and shift work. So there is a lot of elements, but part of that is physical sort of stress and training when fatigued, and being like going from like you're asleep at 2 a.m, the bells go instantly, your heart's gone from up to 100 miles an hour. So that over 20-30 years obviously has an effect on your body. So when I advise people on how to train, it's great to do that because it does give you an experience of it as well, especially like and again we don't do it as often as I used to when I started sort of nearly 20 years ago now, is breathing a set down right to its maximum and trying to work as hard as you can, because that gives you that experience in like the back of your head of what it sort of feels like. So it's okay to do that every now and then, but all you're doing then is adding unnecessary stress to your body. So if you did that sort of weekly or every other day, that stress, you can't avoid stress in this job.
No.
Because like when the battles go, a lot you got to go. So if you can reduce the occurrence of that happening by not training in your fire kit and working to 100% sort of maximum every time, for me it's like an odds game. You're improving your odds a tiny bit.
Yeah.
And contamination as well. And contamination is a major thing. And I know now, you know, if you go into one house fire now, you've got to click in your kit, which is great. But if you go into any sort of kit room on a station, even as in it's meant to be sort of brand new, sort of clean kit, it always smells of fire, always. So that to me says there's bits in the air. So again, with the fire kit, I'm not saying to not ever do it, because it does mean you can experience how to move and bend and twist and run and do things like that in fire kit. So it's not a blanket, no. But if there's a if there's a 0.25 chance of you getting contaminated every time you wear a kit,
I see.
If you do it all the time, you're just increasing those chances for me, if that makes any sense.
To be honest, I always used to do it in the clean kit. But change it over for that reason. It's really good advice you've given there. I probably just needed better ideas of doing fitness.
But it's not a bad thing. And like I say, it does experience, you know, especially if you built it into like a practical bit. So if you're doing sort of running up and down the stairs in your kit and things like that, I'm not saying it's not. It is a good. It's good to have that in the back of your head. So when you do it for real, you kind of know sort of what it is. Obviously, there's a load of extra layers of stress on a real job. But it is important to experience it and crawl around on your hands and knees and sweating and gasping and things like that. But I wouldn't make it a staple. I wouldn't ever sort of recommend to do it as normal.
I mean, to be fair to our fitness advisor in Leicestershire, which I forgot their name, he's very, very similar in your thinking. He used to give, you know, similar advice. He was very good. He's still there. So talking about resilience, and whether that's mental resilience and physical resilience, what can we do about that? And that's a big question.
That's a tricky one. I think a lot more sort of trial and error. I don't think there's any harm. You know, we had like a bit of a discussion before this about sort of being sort of willing to make mistakes and trying things, and that could be big sort of policy changes or campaigns and resources. Right, we'll give it a go. Is it working? No, okay, we'll scrap it. We'll try something else. So I think that can help, rather than. There's a lot in the fire service that we've always done because we've always done it, and there's not always a reason behind it. And you tend to not necessarily sort of go for the motions, but I like the idea of trying stuff and trying things out and being sort of prepared to fail. And if something sort of doesn't work, is not thinking, right, that's a ridiculous idea, you know, and you're in trouble, you know, we need to, you know, thinking, okay, it didn't work, we're trying to something else. So maybe an improved sort of culture of, it's okay to make mistakes. That would help. I think it's a bigger question to ask, because I think it's a society issue. I think in general, I think there's a lot of again, I don't want to offend anyone, so I have to choose my words, but there's a lot of people are very easily, not necessarily easily offended, but there's often a message behind a lot of things that I think it's okay to ask questions and find out more, rather than being scared to ask questions, if that makes any sense. And as a society, I think a lot of people sort of jump on bandwagons, and it's in papers and news and things like that, when I think if you actually go down to like the root of the issue, instead of saying like the fire service is this or the fire service is that, it might just be sort of one individual or one, you know, or like a couple of people. So that sort of resilience, I think, to question things, and then and give them a chance to kind of respond sort of positively, rather than instantly thinking, well, it doesn't work, I can't do that. If that makes any sense. But I think it's a tricky thing to ask. But being reactive and making changes and not being afraid to change, I think can only be a good thing.
So, and this is resilience. So just thinking about this, because you've said you're quite a rural brigade, so I should imagine in the summer and the warmer months, you have a lot of field fires. And we've both experienced field fires and barn fires. Horrible, hot, sweaty. So is there anything that Staffordshire do in regards to those, you know, really physically demanding fires, that are not over. Like a house fire can be over in under an hour, can't it?
Yeah.
But like a fire in a field or a barn, it can be hours and hours of graft. We've both been there, haven't we?
Yeah. Not fun.
What does Staffordshire do about that with incidents like that? Do they have drinks on the appliances, or what do they do?
Yes, it's something coincidentally we've tried to review in the last sort of year. And when I say me, I've been involved a little bit, but not much. So our sort of ERT, our team who look after the welfare.
Sorry, what does that stand for?
Emergency response team.
Oh, right.
Emergency response team. Yeah. So it's so they're reviewing the welfare now. It's just coming to an end to kind of improve it. So we used to have like a can van, a canteen van. You used to sort of turn up after, I think, roughly sort of 4 hours into a job, if essentially if it's going to be a long job. And then you'd get like an old sort of like a military sort of pack of food that you sort of tip the water in and shake it up, and it warms up, and they're always awful. But it was and maybe a hot chocolate and things like that. Over the years, it's changed a little bit. So when I first started, you used to be able to get a Mars bar and things like that. But then they sort of took them away and stuck to these meals. But now it's gone back on itself a little bit to say most of the time, because if you're as you know, if you're at a job for a long period of time, you generally get relieved anyway. So you might only need like a hot chocolate and a Mars bar, and then bang, and then like, you don't always want a big half cold, half hot meal that's big and stodgy. It's not to say there isn't a place for it, but that should be more of like a stage thing. So I have things on the truck, when this is where sort of staffs are going to go. So things on the truck for like a quick hit, which might be a chocolate bar and things like that. And then if it's a longer incident, then you get the warm meals, but then you get relieved, and then you get like an incident command unit where there's a bit more resources and things like that. So it should slowly grow sort of with the job. So you're right. We do get, especially like in the Roaches up north of the county, pretty much every year you can guarantee I think there was a 6
more fires.
And they sort of rip through the brigade, and because we're quite a small brigade, obviously we only need sort of one job of that, and we're completely sort of stripped to fire engines. So there is a lot of work in terms of working with other brigades to kind of get relief, but it's a horrible period in like over the summer, because it's such a high turnover, and we have people who are on call retained who end up working a lot of hours because they go from one station to another essentially. So it's a lot. I mean, so I've only ever been sort of whole time, so I've never had to sort of deal with that. But so it's something that we're always sort of trying to improve. But it's improving the welfare, improving the crew rotation and things like that. So it is a conscious thing of the service to try and help.
So that's good. Yeah, you sound similar to Leicestershire actually. I think they've improved the resilience for their crews during those kind of long hot incidents. They've improved, and they are continuing improving. And in regards to improving, so what is so Staffordshire, let's talk about Staffordshire Fire and Rescue, their firefighter fitness. Is there anything developing in regards to that? Anything new coming along? Or
well, hopefully we're on so I've been in contact with a couple of academics sort of London way. One's in the fire service and one's not. And we're hoping to launch some sort of studies, and we've recently got the okay to start the research, if you like, and start the data collection. And it's things like it's trying to work on what type of work capabilities that you have when you've got a BA set on. So the idea is we get a load of volunteers to put a set on and do sort of job related sort of tasks, and then you see the effect it has on their body, and see what sort of age groups and whether there is a male and female issue of anything, and split the ages in 10 years sort of chunks, and climbing up a ladder, is that harder for a 45-year-old, which I imagine it is, than it is for like a 20-year-old. So we get a bit more sort of data rather than assuming all this, and then we can obviously it either sort of leads on to more sort of focused research onto that age group or that issue, but it also means I can build resources to kind of improve, so say for example, if your strength endurance sort of drops after the age of 45 when you're wearing a BA set, I could build an over 45 sort of training program, for example. It kind of leads more research, but a lot more tangible sort of programs I can build. So that is sort of just starting as well.
So So you'll be able to buy the data that you're going to get with all these other the team members, the academics, all the data. Do you think you'll be able to help firefighters reach that goal of 60 or even older?
Give them the best shot. Yeah. I think it's the problem is with age. It's you could be the healthiest, fittest person ever. If age sort of wants to get you, it kind of will do.
Yeah.
So it doesn't always mean that there's a solution. And I think that's half the issue with increasing the retirement age. It's great because there's like mid 60s sort of firefighters in this sort of service, and they're amazing and super fit and brilliant. But they're the outliers, and there are people in their sort of late 50s, early 60s who've tried and worked through really hard.
Yeah.
But they just can't sort of reach those sort of levels because their body ain't sort of letting them, or like it's breaking down.
Yeah.
So I suppose my job in that department is to give them the tools and as much help and support as I physically can, and try and increase their chances of that longevity. Yeah. But it is unfortunate when you see sort of some people thinking, I can see that you're struggling, and you're passing the fitness test and can do the job fine, but there's got to be other sort of reasons other than saying no, just work forever. It makes me feel a bit uncomfortable sort of sometimes. But
I think would it? I'm not a fitness advisor, so my knowledge is minimal, if at all. But do you think some of it comes down to own personal responsibility? Because someone like me, I've always made sure I've kept fit because I'm competitive, so I don't want to lose. Things like that. Unfortunately, as you get older, you lose a lot more, don't you?
Yeah.
But that's my own personal responsibility, and I've been fortunate not to have injuries. Or if I did, they weren't too bad. Do you think part of that is personal responsibility?
Yeah, I think it's kind of understanding that a lot sooner as well.
Yeah,
and thinking I can't rely exactly. Yeah, ideally, and I can't rely. It's like we're sort of really big as a service to say don't rely on the stations in the gym. Sorry, the gym's on the station. Don't think I'll keep fit at work, because that will soon wear out. If you have a busy day, or if you have sort of like your 2 blocks, like your summer leave off, because we do like the 4 on 4 off.
Yeah.
That's like 20 odd days off.
Yeah.
So that's a big chunk if you're not doing anything in that time.
Yeah.
So don't treat work. I always say to people, treat your training at work as sort of bonus sort of sessions, and everything sort of needs to be done outside. And then the earlier you get into that sort of routine, it should improve your chances. But I think it's not really an age thing, I suppose. It's realizing you can't get away with stuff that you used to in your 20s, that you used to rely on. You used to go whether it's sort of going out on the beer or something like that, or having a really sort of busy week, just like a day's rest, a night's sleep, and bang, you're back up. Yeah. As soon as you realise that is going to slow down very, very quickly, and get hard, everything gets harder and harder.
Yeah.
But it is 100%. It is possible if you're sort of proactive and positive about it, and kind of understand you don't have to beast yourself in the gym. You don't have to run a marathon. You don't have to be the biggest and strongest. If you find something that you enjoy, it could be sort of walking, running, hiking, swimming, going cycling with the kids. It doesn't always have to be major stuff. If you're doing that as a foundation, and then whatever you do sort of job related on top is a bonus, really, as long as you've got that sort of good foundation.
Yeah. So nationally, because you're involved with National Firefit, the development of the firefighter fitness for the future, is there anything that's going to come soon? Or
I think so, it's not something I've been direct. Well, a bit of the studies that we're doing should hopefully sort of impact things sort of nationally eventually, but I know some people, like I spoke to one person the other day, and he's doing a sort of core temperature sort of analysis, like when you're in a job, because obviously if you can positively affect your core temperature, that means that you can perform but better in those sort of scenarios and make decision makers. Because going back to sort of training when you're tired and to improve decision making, a massive thing is hydration and heat management of your body, which obviously is out of your control in some respects, but you can sort of the fitter you are, the more controlled, the more hydrated you are. because all that sort of goes out the window. If you're hot and bothered and stressed, then you have to make a decision or do like a technical task. So there's a lot of studies wherein sort of heat monitors in sort of firehouses and that, and training houses to sort of monitor heat, and heart rhythm as well. Heart attacks. This is the biggest killer. It's definitely in America. I think it's sort of worldwide of firefighters, both in the job and outside the job. So there's a lot of an analysis of heart rate monitors. There's issues with this though, because of the nature of the job. Most normal heart rate monitors or sort of watches and wearables, they don't like going into hot temperatures where there's sort of fire. So even if it's in a controlled environment, so there have been sort of companies that have made sort of bespoke ones to actually sort of cope with the heat. So that, I think, is where it's going. There's going to be not a reliance, but we're going to use sort of technology a lot more to assess people, and not only the external sort of can you pass the fitness test, but how healthy actually are you. And I'm a big fan, and we don't do it in this brigade, and I don't think sort of many do, but sort of things like sort of blood work and that, I think, because that's the only true way you know sort of someone's health. And I don't think it should be sort of standard, because I don't know how you'd sort of manage that. I don't think people would trust me with a needle sort of doing. But even if it's as part of like we have an asbestos medical every 3 years, so they sort of test your like exposure, and you do a urine test and things like that. I think it'd be great if we had sort of a proper sort of a blood test, so we could actually have a look at all the monitors and things like that. So things like that I can see coming in the future, but technology I think is going to play a huge role.
It's interesting you mentioned the blood work. I've not heard that before, but in regard to all this work that's done on firefighters, what is interesting, so like asbestos medical, let's say, it's done every 3 years. I've not had one for 6 years, because I've retired. Well, surely they should carry on with those asbestos medicals.
100%,
But I suppose it's cost.
Yeah, it is, but it's not right, because because you've done your time, and you've sort of you've served your community, and then you're like, right, you're gone. And like, it's the same. I haven't got the experience in the military, but I presume it's sort of similar there.
Yes, it is.
And I think it's wrong. You were in a dangerous job, and not just in terms of broken arms and legs and things falling on you, but all the unseen stuff like asbestos and chemicals and smoke and that you've been breathing in. I do believe that there should be some aftercare. I know the Firefighters Charity do an amazing work for retired staff. And you can still sort of use all their facilities as a retired member, which is amazing. But I don't know if there's any sort of annual checks. But you're right, because I remember going back to my dad again. He worked in factories. That was always the first sort of question that was asked about, because he worked in sort of chemical places and he had sort of a lung disease like before he died, and they said it was because of all the years in glue factories and things like that.
Right.
But coincidentally, actually, I found out the other day. The FBU have released a letter to give to your doctor, and I don't know how well, because I only found out about it.
SNOMED something.
I can't remember what it was, but you're meant to give it to your doctor, so therefore so then it goes on your record. So whenever you go in about anything, it doesn't set up any annual sort of like a check or anything. But if you come in with anything, it should be at the top sort of your record to say, make sure you ask about A, B, and C. Which could be like asbestos and lung conditions and things like that.
So if anybody's watching now, whether there is anybody watching, but so there's a firefighter watching now, or someone that's been in the fire service and they're retired. So how do they get this letter for the GP?
The easiest thing is to go to the FBU, and I think it's actually on the website. But if you can't find it on the website, if you just sort of send them an email.
Oh, brilliant.
And I got a copy of it like the other day, so I'm 100% going to do it. And it might not ever be sort of needed, but it just means even if you go in with a broken leg, it'll be there, and they'll ask questions that could be sort of relevant to the conditions
cancer,
that we've worked in. Essentially,
yeah.
So it's really important.
Asbestos, Oh, right. That's really good information out there. So finally, I'll release you after this. Appreciate all your time. So where do you see? And this is a long question. Hopefully not too difficult. But where do you see the fire service in 5, 10, and 20 years? Because in 20 years, I'm sure imagine you'll still be.
No. Well, I'm mid-40s now, so hopefully not.
Maybe you'll be a fitness advisor guru.
Yeah, maybe.
But where do you see the changes in the next 5, 10, 20 years?
So again, there's a I want lists, and then what I realistically think is going to happen. I'd love personally that I'm going to try and get into staff as much as possible. Is use a bit of like the US sort of model. So it starts from day one. So on their sort of training school is quite intense, and it's a bit more like a military sort of base where they have sort of daily PT and they're all out on the yard doing sort of push-ups and things like that. Obviously, whatever exercises and training we do is like intelligent. It's not just for a beasting, but it's kind of educate. These are the best sort of movements that help for firefighting. So I'd love that to start from day one and have a bit more sort of touch points sort of with the recruits. So when they come out on station, it's kind of inbuilt in them already that they've got that sort of culture, and hopefully that will start to spread. And I'm forever sort of building resources, and whether it's sort of posters on the gym or sort of courses, I'd love to sort of develop that, have sort of CPD days essentially, but related to health and fitness, and sort of compulsory days sort of dotted about, not all day, every day. But it just seems like it's the last thing that's kind of thought about for re-education, where, you know, it should be core at least sort of once or twice a year of having a talk on nutrition, a talk on sleep, on hydration or whatever. And I'd love to make that a standard. And the technology, as we mentioned, I think that's going to become sort of more and more. So instead of sort of me sort of analysing someone's sort of movements, I think it won't be long before there's a watch or something on, and like I'll record all your data when I'm not even sort of with you, so you're out and about on station doing the real job, so it's not in a false environment. So you're going in and out of fires, climbing.
And you forget about it there, won't you?
Exactly. And then I get the data after a week, and I can say, well, there's an issue there. You know, you could do some work on there, or blah blah blah. Did you struggle? How was your sleep on that day? Blah blah blah. Then I can give a proper like a report, and that's why I think it's going sort of long term.
Oh, that is interesting.
But I think there's loads of interesting people that I'm working with, sort of nationally, that are really keen to kind of push things. So I think it's positive.
I suppose in regards to stuff like that, it's all about communicating why it's going to be beneficial to the individual, isn't it? Because they might think, oh, Big Brother's looking at me.
Exactly.
No, it's not. It's for your own health.
Yeah, exactly. And it would all be sort of voluntary. There would be some, and I suppose that's the difficult thing. I do think there should be accountability, and I do think that we should be fitter than the average person across the road. 100%.
Completely agree.
But at the same time, not everyone wants to go in the gym every day, which is absolutely fine. So it's not about being, I'm repeating myself, it's not about being the biggest and strongest all the time. It's just about, you need to be fit enough to do the job. And if I collapse, I want to know that my mate can pull me out, and vice versa. So I want to make myself not massively overweight, because I think if I collapse, I want to, if my mate, I look at him going, he might be able to sort of drag me out. I want that a bit of accountability. You know what I mean? So it does work sort of both ways. And asking for help, I think, as well. It's still a macho sort of like a working sort of like a sector, and people are struggling at an element, and they're too sort of nervous or shy to and they don't want to embarrass themselves. Where I'm the opposite. I want people to tell me if there's rather than turning up for your fitness test and having issues. If you had told me sort of a couple of months ago I'm having issues, then we could have sorted it by now. So
that's right,
just being open and honest and treating it as a course, as a BA course, and all that.
I that's exactly how I saw it as well. It was one of my skills. And the fitter I was, the better I performed. It's
definitely 100%.
There'd be a few people that argue with that. There you go. So, well, that's great. I've learned so much today, and hopefully people that are watching it have learned a lot as well. And it's all good. It sounds like there's a good future, not only for Staffordshire, but for the national picture of firefighter fitness, that are people like yourself doing work that a lot of us don't know you're doing, to be honest. So, the more we know about it, the better it is, and it's all positive. If we can make people healthy and fitter, then it's got to be great.
Definitely.
So, well, thanks very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, and I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
And hopefully everyone else has enjoyed it that are watching.